Well, hello guys. Today I am at a historical location that designates the site of one of the worst train accidents in the history of the state of Virginia. So let's go see what we can find out about what happened with this train wreck. So this historical marker actually designates the 1889 Thaxton train wreck, in which at least 18 people perished, which was one of Virginia's worst railroad accidents. And I'm going to tell you the story about it, but where the wreck happened was just a few feet up that way where you cannot see the railroad anymore, where there was a washout underneath a creek, underneath the railroad from a creek. So I'm going to tell you the story. Let's go find out some more about that, guys. The historical newspaper article accounts of this wreck note that on July 2nd, about 1:30 in the morning, this train was traveling from Roanoke towards Liberty, which is modern-day Bedford, Virginia. There had been heavy rainstorms throughout Virginia for about 48 hours. About 1:30 then, it ran into a washout near what was known as Thaxton Switch, because that's a place where trains could switch directions. It was basically a dry stream bed that only really filled up much with water whenever there was heavy rains. There was like a little culvert that the train track ran over, and that washed out and collapsed when the locomotive passed over top of it. So the locomotive and several cars were thrown down into the hole that was created, but the sleeper car remained on the track. Then, because it was a steam-driven locomotive, the cars caught fire after falling into the ditch, and several train employees were burned to death, as well as a number of passengers. Most of the records that the train was carrying about the passenger and the passenger list were burnt up as well. So it was very difficult to get the accurate number of people who were killed. The washout that was caused was about 80 feet long and 50 feet wide. The water had risen to a level of about 8 to 10 feet deep. The train track was elevated, and so you were unable to tell how deep that water actually was below those train tracks. Guys, this is the creek bed, the Wolf Creek that flooded so severely on the railroad track. And it's a really hard thing to be able to access it, and I don't know if you can tell by looking through there, but you can see that there is an earth berm that's built up along the side of the creek, probably to help with flood control. But this, from that right there down to here is the current creek bed, and it kind of, when it's got water in it, it's flowing that way. So this is probably a dry creek bed most of the time. And right here in this one little spot, you can see how deep that creek bed is. And then nicely, a young man in a storage unit let us come into the very end of their property. So if you look right there, there's the railroad track, which is running directly behind this storage unit place that we're in. And for sure, because we're about 100 yards from the creek right here, so for sure some of the trains that remain, some of the train cars that remained on the track were along right where I'm standing at. And this right here is the railroad bridge that's at what is today Montvale, but was Buford at the time of the 1889 wreck. So this was the station directly before the location where the wreck happened. tracks as well. This is the track that the train was on, that was approaching from the west from Roanoke. They left from Roanoke and they were going towards Thaxton. And so this approach right here is probably about maybe a half to a quarter of a mile away from the actual site of the Culvert washout there at Wolf Creek. But you can see that their approach was on a curve, and this gives you an idea of the lay of the land. The peaks of Otter are right over there. And of course, this isn't exactly the same as it was. And the reason that it was called Thaxton Switch is because there were two tracks there. There were two tracks there where the trains actually would do a switch from track to track. So it was a transfer location. This right here is all of the old Thaxton area right by the railroad track. So I'm sure this was probably what was called as Thaxton Switch, because the railroad track is immediately over here to our left.
Hello friends, and thanks for giving us your time. And please drop us a comment because we just love getting those. But more importantly, keep going out and exploring. Life matters. We hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.